somebody? Yes, I do.
Dylan's body's never been found.
It's 4 o'clock in the morning. There's a bunch of guys in hiding.
There's like some tension.
Might not be a missing person at all, but the victim of a homicide.
It just doesn't make sense.
I'm scared for everybody. I want to find Dylan. I want to find out what happened to him.
Will we prove it? I hope so. I do believe we will.
Welcome to True Crime and Wine. If you're new here, hi, hello, welcome. I am Sherilyn. I'm so glad you found me. If you're not new here, welcome back. Thank you for joining me every single episode. We are off to an awesome start. Episode. I love and I appreciate you so much. You know what else I love and appreciate? That the 90s are coming back, baby. You all know how much I love a 90s moment. A 90s quote, a 90s movie, a 90s song. And so I'm like really inspired by like all like the messy Pamela Anderson vibes we've got going on right now. So that's what we're doing today. All right, we have no time to waste. We're going to get right into it today. Oh, it's going to be one of those uploads. I think every single upload is an upload I can't speak in, but seems like it's going to be extra today. Before we get started, I would like to give a huge thank you to our sponsor today and for continuing to sponsor and support the channel. I just am so thankful for them. It is HelloFresh. I mean, I can't say how many times how much I love HelloFresh and how I've been a longtime fan of HelloFresh prior to having their support that I do appreciate so much. I mean, first and foremost, one of the reasons I love it is just how delicious it is. And I love that they're always switching that up. Right now we're moving into spring. So if you're looking for like a little spring refresh, they have such a wide variety of dishes so you can explore different global flavors, if you will. I personally also appreciate and comment all the time to my husband how fresh it is. Oh, I just kind of made that connection. Hello, fresh. But it is. It's fresh. Their produce comes from the farm to your front door in under a week. So you know you're getting the freshest of the fresh. Hello, fresh. That's why I don't sing their themes. Another thing I love is that I don't enjoy the whole thinking about what I'm going to cook, the whole cooking process. I wish I was that kind of mom and wife, but I'm not. So I love that everything is effortless. With HelloFresh, you have step-to-step recipes. It's super easy to follow. Everything's pre-proportioned, so I don't have to sit there and prep anything. So not only does that eliminate wasting food, it also helps me cut out time that I don't really want to spend in the kitchen and time that I can be doing other things, especially now that spring's coming, it's warmer, I want to be outside more. And I love that it saves me money so I can spend money on doing outside activities. You guys know I have been cutting out my ordering food in addiction. It's going well. And by taking a pause on those things, it makes me realize how much money I was spending. HelloFresh is up to 72% cheaper than dining out. I think one thing that is helping me stay on track with my goals too is HelloFresh has 50 weekly options for you. So it doesn't feel too repetitive. That's honestly one of the reasons why I would fall off the avoiding online ordering thing, because when I would cook, it was between my 3 staple meals. If you've been here for a while, you know it's either spaghetti, tacos, or chicken and rice and vegetables. And then last but not least, I do like eating more sustainably. I don't know if it's the same in your area where you're living, but right now where we live, we've started this new waste collection system where our garbage doesn't get picked up every week anymore. It's every 2 weeks. And our recyclables get picked up every week. So it's made us so much more conscious about what things are recyclable, and I'm aware of all of the things I wasn't recycling before. So it's really cool that HelloFresh is the first carbon neutral meal kit company, and nearly all of their packaging is recyclable. Makes you feel good that you're eating good and doing good, you know? Good. This week we whipped up some tacos. I know, Sherilyn, you already always cook tacos, but this is why I love HelloFresh, because it's tacos with a spin. I would have never thought to do this honey garlic factor. It's so delicious, and this is what I'm talking about when I'm saying it gets you outside the box, keeps things interesting, and it shouldn't taste as good as it does for how easy it is to make, but it does. If you guys also want to get out of your cooking funk, go to HelloFresh.com and use my code Sherilyn16 for up to 16 free meals and 3 surprise gifts. Once again, that is HelloFresh.com and use my code Sherilyn16 for up to 16 free meals and 3 surprise gifts. Thank you again so much, HelloFresh, for continuing to support myself and the channel and for putting delicious meals in my family's and my Sippendale family's bellies. I appreciate it. All right, it is riddle time. I know I say it lots, but I look so forward to seeing your guys' answers. They're so fun. You guys are so smart. Even when it's wrong, your answers are still right because they make sense. All right, today's riddle is, I turn once, what is out will not get in. I turn again, what is in will not get out. What am I? All right, grab your drinks, grab your snacks. Let me know what you are sipping on in the comments. Today I am back at it with the water again. No, it's not because I'm pregnant. It's because I surprised Big Eye by taking him to Vancouver to go and see one of his favorite artists, Teddy Swims. And we definitely took advantage of the fact that it was the first time we have been away from our children overnight since Reverie's been born. So in over a year. And we drank copious amounts of alcohol. So I'm rehydrating with H2O. I'm at that stage in life now where a hangover lasts a week. And to the person who thought I was pregnant because of all of my weight gain, I hope you're having a great day. All right, let's get started. Today's case has been one that stuck with me for several years. 14 years to be exact. It happened in my city of Edmonton, so it definitely adds that extra element of it feeling very personal. Hearing about streets and places that someone you're researching has been that you know like the back of your hand, it really makes you realize that the things we talk about can happen to anybody, anywhere, at any time. Today, we are talking about the disappearance of a man named Dylan Koshman. And Dylan hasn't been seen in almost 14 years after abruptly leaving his house after an argument he had with one of his cousins and leaving in only a t-shirt, jeans, and shoes when it was below freezing outside. There is a lot of speculation in this case. There's a lot of accusations being thrown around that make people feel like what happened to Dylan is very obvious, but I think it's really important to remember that a family has been ripped apart by this, and by the end you may not feel like it's as cut and dry as it seems. I want to start from the beginning and just introduce to you who Dylan is. Dylan Koshman was born April 11th, 1987. This would have been Dylan's birthday week. He was born to Melanie Alex and Dan Koshman in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. There are about 33,000 to 34,000 people who live in Moose Jaw. It's a small town feel, but it has put itself on the map for having the largest moose sculpture located at the Highway Information Center. His name is Mac the Moose, and he is the town staple. The Snowbirds flight team is also based in Moose Jaw, which is a military aerobatic flight demonstration team of the Royal Canadian Air Force, and it's also home to the Koshman family. Dylan was the middle child. He had 2 older siblings and 2 younger. The family was blended, and it sounds like Dylan was that middle piece that connected both sides. He was the light of his entire family's lives. He was the entertainer, the prankster, the sensitive one. He was always there for everybody and always had everyone laughing. He was also very active. He loved playing soccer growing up, big fan of fishing and camping as well. His mom shared on the Dark Poutine podcast that he was the one who rallied the family to even start camping to begin with. when he was 7 years old, he wanted the family to go camping. So he's the one who got on a classifieds, found a camper that would work for everybody and showed it to his parents and was like, we need this one. Camping with the family did become one of those things where they look back and those are the fondest memories they have. And it's all thanks to Dylan. His sister said he was the one that kept everybody close. He was the one who picked up the phone and did weekly check-ins. He wanted to keep in touch. Family meant so much to him, so he would never miss an opportunity to see everybody at a family gathering, or if someone was just cooking up a Sunday dinner, you could always count on Dylan to be there. I also heard he wouldn't pass up an opportunity to hold a baby, and that really stuck with me because I don't know about you, but I know a lot of men, especially when they were in their teens or early 20s like Dylan was, who are not baby people, not down for holding newborns. But the impression I got was he was, rolling up his sleeves. Give me the babies. He is memorable to say the least. I mean, even myself not knowing Dylan, but being from Edmonton, I remember when he went missing and seeing the flyers distributed and billboards with his face on it. He always stuck with me. I mean, one reason is quite obvious. He's a very good-looking individual, but he's one of those people who, through a photograph, you can see warmth in his eyes and his smile. I'm not gonna lie, if I would have bumped into him at a bar in Edmonton, I may have turned into a stage 5 clinger. Learning about him, I think another thing that makes him even more endearing is that he isn't described as one of those guys who knows he's good looking. He wasn't a playboy. His mom said he was actually really quite shy, especially around girls. His dimple is definitely a standout feature, and his sister shared actually, again on the Dark Poutine podcast, that his dimple isn't actually even a dimple at all. It's a scar that he got during like a freak accident fall when he landed on a screwdriver when he was young. And then it left him with this adorable scar that looked like a dimple. Like I mentioned, Dylan was born in Moose Jaw, very much a small town feel. And in 2008, when Dylan was about to turn 21, he wanted to get out of there and see a little bit more about what the world had to offer. He wanted to check out a bigger city. His aspirations long term were to do something that he could help people with. He was in shape. He liked to work out, go to the gym. So he thought his ultimate goal would be to be a firefighter one day. Prior to doing that, though, he was going to check out a trade. He set his sights on Edmonton, and here the population is about 1.3 million people. So huge change from the 34,000 in Moose Jaw. Just personally being from Alberta, I know a lot of people with the same goals as Dylan had. Alberta is viewed as, the trades province, and that can be really appealing, especially to young men, because they can come here, get their tickets, and make a lot of money. That was Dylan's plan. So in 2008, he packed up his things in Saskatchewan and made his way to Alberta. Before he headed to Edmonton, he made a stop at his sister's to stay for a couple months in Red Deer, which is about 2 hours away from Edmonton, about an hour and a half away from Calgary. His sister Tara said she loved that time. Growing up, they got to do their, camping thing together, which was fun, but growing up, they primarily only got to spend time together on weekends because that's when Tara would come and visit her dad, which is where Dylan lived. She said that wasn't necessarily a negative because with them not living together every day, it allowed them to have more of a loving brother and sister relationship because they're not annoying each other all the time or at each other's throats. So she was happy to be that pit stop for him because it gave them some time to spend some solid time together. After a couple months with Tara, Dylan made the move to Edmonton, and he wasn't necessarily on his own or without family. He moved in with his 2 first cousins who were already living here. His cousin Colin DeMasson and Colin's younger brother Nick Koshman. The 3 of them lived together in a bungalow on the south side of the city, located on 33rd Ave and 104th Street. Not long after arriving to Edmonton, Dylan got a job as a pipe fitting apprentice, and he was looking forward to going to school and getting the tickets that he needed to start making some really good money. Not long after arriving, he also met a girl while he was out on the town on White Ave named Erin. It was really surreal reading about the things he did and the places he went. At the same time, in 2008, my friends and I were also hitting up White Avenue on the weekends. For everybody who doesn't know, White Ave is a very popular area of the city where there are just a bunch of bars. So you can just hop from spot to spot for blocks, and there's tons of different vibes. During the day, there's lots of cute little shops and coffee places too. It's a really neat area to go and visit, morning or evening. But it was reading about him also being there that was one of those things that made me think about how high the chance is that we probably walked past each other one time or were in the same bar at the same time. And that's what kind of hit home to make me feel like these stories can happen to anybody. So Dylan and Aaron meet at a bar and they quickly connected that night. They started talking, dancing, having drinks together. They became friends at first. Aaron said that he was very funny and sweet, but also had this shy side to him. After that first night, they started spending a lot of time together, and naturally their friendship quickly turned into a romantic relationship. And you know those early days in a new relationship, you just want to spend as much time together as you possibly can with this person. You get butterflies for the work day to end, and you're looking forward to the weekend to spend even more time together. That's what they were going through. And Aaron was spending a lot of time at Dylan's house, which was great for Dylan and Aaron, but I guess Dylan's cousins weren't as excited about the amount of time that she was spending there, and they were wanting Dylan to pay more rent to compensate for how much she was visiting. And I know some people who have been in this situation. It can become a cause for a lot of tension in the house. I personally have experienced it. I have a lot to say on the subject, but I think I'll save it for a podcast discussion. It's not the time and place. Needless to say, tensions were strong and the cousins were bickering a lot. It had gotten so bad that Dylan had told Aaron he was pretty much over it and he was going to start looking for a place of his own. I'm not going to lie, I don't blame him for wanting to get out of this situation. Think it was ridiculous to have that much tension and wanting to find something else. I've seen photos of the inside of the home, and to me personally, it looks quite spacious. My understanding is Dylan's room was also in the basement area, so he's, separated from the upstairs. It just seemed like a control thing to say, how much Aaron could or couldn't be there, especially because I believe Colin's brother, Nick, also had a girlfriend at the time who was spending time at the house. Anyways, that's my personal opinion, probably some projection going on there. So for their situation at home, things aren't going well. And October 10th, 2008 was Canada Thanksgiving long weekend. And this was going to be Dylan's first holiday away from his family. And, we know how important that time is for Dylan and how much he looked forward to spending time with the family. So he wasn't feeling, in the highest of spirits, especially because it didn't sound like the cousins were going to get together and bake a turkey and whip up some stuffing together. But things were looking up for Dylan because another one of his cousins, Dylan Koshman, decided that he was going to come up to visit Dylan in Edmonton that weekend. So it kind of made him feel like a piece of home was coming to him. It sounds like Dylan was really excited to see him, show him around his new stomping grounds, do what 20-year-old guys do, go out on the town, drink, have some fun. But Nick and Colin were not feeling the same excitement as Dylan was. My understanding of this situation is Cameron was not a stranger to getting into trouble, I guess, and Colin and Nick said they didn't want him in the house because of that. I guess they told Dylan that if Cameron was coming, he was going to have to stay somewhere else. And Dylan basically said, no, this is my house too. I pay for rent. He's coming. I'm sure you can imagine with things already super rocky, this just adds even more fuel to the fire. So Cameron shows up, and when Colin realizes this, I guess he's livid. Him and Dylan get into an argument, and he says he officially is now evicted, and by the end of the month, he has to pack up his things and leave the house. They go back and forth, exchanging words, and then Colin leaves the house to go and meet up with some friends and just get out of there. I guess Dylan and Cameron stay at the house. They had some drinks during the day. At some point during the afternoon, Dylan had a nap, and then when they woke up, they went to go and grab some food, have some more drinks, head back to the house, and then just hung out drinking at the house for the evening. Nick was also still at the house with his girlfriend, and according to Nick, he heard Dylan and Cameron talking about the situation that happened earlier with Colin, and they kind of started talking about how they were gonna, show Colin what was up when he got home. They were going to kick his ass. That's the impression Nick got. So he texts his brother and he tells them. And when Colin comes home, obviously he's going to come home, shoulders puffed, and he's ready to confront the two of them. Colin was older than Dylan, and I'm sure there was a part of him that felt like, you know, who do you think you are coming, renting a room in the house that my name's on the lease of, and you're going to kick my ass? And that's how he came home. He walks in and things just automatically go into fight mode. Colin walks in and he confronts Dylan and Cameron, and Colin and Dylan start fighting. It escalates to the point where it's physical. They're fist fighting in the kitchen. Nick's interpretation of what happened was they made it to the floor. Dylan was throwing punches. He said that he didn't see Colin necessarily throwing many punches. He was almost trying to wrestle with Dylan and restrain him. Nick said while they were fighting, he turns around to go and get a drink. And by the time he comes back into the kitchen, Colin's there. Dylan isn't. And Colin says that Dylan left out the back door. I mean, it probably wasn't the worst idea to just get out of the house and out of the situation. The problem is though, is he stormed out of the house wearing just a t-shirt, some skater shoes, and jeans. And it was -8 degrees that night, Celsius. All right, I wasn't prepared. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit. So let's ask Siri. Hey Siri, seriously, what a bee. You guys, she doesn't talk to me anymore.
I won't respond to that.
You don't respond to anything. You're rude. Okay, I'm sorry. Can you help me? Okay, hi Siri. Hey Siri. Hello Siri.
Hello there. What can I do for you?
What is -8 degrees Celsius in Fahrenheit?
The answer is 17.6 degrees Fahrenheit.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, bye. I never feel like more of a loser than when I talk to Siri. Shout out to all the Siris who actually do respond to me whenever I do this part. There's so many of you that tell me that I set off yours and Siri tries to help me on your end. So I appreciate all of that. So it was cold outside and Dylan was alone. Cameron said in a telephone interview that after Dylan left the house, he quickly ran downstairs, gathered his things, ran out the door, but couldn't find Dylan. And the next communication that anybody had from Dylan was to his brother Derek. Dylan had sent Derek a message on his Facebook asking him what his phone number was, but Derek didn't get it at the time that he sent it, and by the time he replied several hours later, he didn't get a response back from Dylan. According to Cameron's phone records, somebody using Dylan's phone or Dylan tried calling Cameron around 3:30 a.m. and there were multiple calls placed in the time span of about a minute. Cameron missed the calls at the time though because he was on the phone with 911 and he was reporting to them that he was hiding from Colin because he was scared that he was going to beat him up. And Cameron wasn't the only person to call 911 from that area that evening. At least 2 of their neighbors also called 911 to report loud fighting. But these neighbors were saying that there was a fight going on outside on someone's front lawn. This is one of those 911 calls that came through and this was at 4 a.m.
Edmonton Police Service. Hello? Hello? I was calling with a public disturbance. It's 4 o'clock in the morning. There's a bunch of guys in fighting. Okay. And you don't know if there's any weapons involved? I have no idea what these guys. They're going crazy. They're just crazy. Okay. Yelling at each other, going nuts. How old are they? 25, 30, I don't know. Okay. I'll put a call in.
This whole 911 part is what's really confusing to me because Dylan had already left by this time. And Cameron said that he also had gathered his things right after Dylan and left too. So if this is, you know, what's happening and there's a fight going on outside on the lawn, who's fighting? You know, did Dylan come back? Was it Cameron? We don't know. And the police aren't sharing. That isn't unusual. Police do withhold a lot of information to, you know, protect the integrity of the case. That evening, police were sent out. They did arrive at the cousin's house, but it wasn't until hours later, and when they went to the door, nobody answered. I'm sure this is really common, especially on a weekend or long weekend. You know, someone calls in that there's a disturbance, it's a fight going on between people, a lot of alcohol involved. By the time the police get there, it's either settled or people have left, they've passed out. So that's what they thought happened here. Everybody just fell asleep and they left. Now this evening, Erin, although she was with Dylan the majority of the time, she wasn't with him that night. She was out with friends. So she doesn't know what happened or saw anything. And around 3:30, she messages Dylan to see what's up and if she should come over. She doesn't get a response back, but she just figures he probably just passed out, so she goes home.
Like, I think our last exchange was something like, I said I might come there because I was out with my friends. I said I might come there, leave the door unlocked. And he said, okay. And then it was close to 3:30 when I called a couple times and it just rang and went to voicemail. So I just assumed he had gone to sleep.
The next morning, she gives him a call when she wakes up, and Dylan, again, doesn't answer. She's trying not to really jump to conclusions, though. She knows that Cameron's in town visiting him, so she just figures, okay, maybe they're up to something, having some bonding time, and she goes about her day. When the evening rolls around, though, and she still hasn't heard from him, she starts calling the landline. After a couple attempts of trying and no answer, Colin finally picks up, and she asks to speak to Dylan, and he just says he's not there. Erin's like, oh, okay. Well, I have some things that I need that I've left there. Is it okay if I pop by quickly and pick them up? And Colin just tells her no and hangs up. Erin's like, what the fudge is going on? She goes back to trying to get a hold of him on his cell. It keeps going to voicemail, and this is when, now her mind is spinning. She thinks, okay, maybe something's happened to him. So she starts calling the hospitals around the area. She starts calling the remand center, wondering if he got picked up and put in jail. But they say because she's not his spouse, they can't give her any information.
Some hospitals to see if maybe he had been hurt and was in the hospital, and they didn't have any record of that. And I tried calling the police. I think I called the remand center to see if maybe he had been arrested, and they said they couldn't give me any information.
She has no idea what to do. Their relationship is relatively new. She hasn't met any of his, immediate family. She only knows his cousins. They're not even letting her go and grab her things. So she goes on Dylan's Facebook through his friends list, and she finds his brother Derek and sends him a message. She just asks him if he by chance had heard from Dylan. She hadn't, and she was just starting to get a little bit worried. When his brother first sees this message from Erin, his initial thought is, ooh, okay, does Dylan have a stage 5 clinger here? For the record, Erin wasn't, but it would have been me. His brother's thinking, maybe he's just ignoring her right now, needs to take a little bit of a breather. So he just writes back and says, I'm sure he's okay. If and when I hear from him, though, I'll let him know that you reached out and tell him to get in touch with you. Derek did try calling Dylan, but he didn't get an answer back. He's not thinking the worst, though. He's just thinking, he's a 21-year-old. He's out doing his thing, and he'll call him back in a couple days. Now, remember, this was a long weekend. So on that Monday, Dylan didn't have work, but he was scheduled for the Tuesday. So on Tuesday, Erin calls his work, hoping to talk to him, figure out, what happened the past 2 days. But she talks to his boss, and his boss says he just didn't show up. So she messages Derek again, and she lets him know, I just tried calling his work, and they also haven't seen it. And now Derek is concerned. He knows this isn't his brother. He would have his fun, but he's reliable. At the very least, if he wasn't coming in, he would call and let them know. So Derek reaches out to their sister Tara and kind of gives her the rundown about everything that's happened the past couple days. At first, her idea was the same as Derek's. They didn't really have any idea how long Dylan and Erin knew each other. They didn't know the backstory to that relationship. And initially, they didn't just want to jump to conclusions and get everybody all worked up and worried. But by the end of the conversation, kind of going back and forth, there's that gut feeling that just says something doesn't seem right, and they decide to let Dylan's mother, Melanie, know. Melanie went into mama mode. She doesn't question a thing, and she calls the Edmonton City Police from Saskatchewan to report him missing. However, their protocol at the time was that if you were in a different province, you couldn't file a missing persons report. So they wouldn't let her file one. She has shared in several interviews since then that they have changed their protocol now, and she stresses that if a loved one of yours is missing, no matter what province you are in, call immediately to report report them missing. Unfortunately for them, though, at this point, that wasn't a thing and she wasn't allowed to do that. So she calls Dylan's cousin Colin that he's living with and says, you need to go down to the Edmonton City Police and report him missing immediately. Allegedly, Colin never did this. The police have said that the first person they ever spoke to regarding Dylan's disappearance was his girlfriend Erin. Once the word spreads in Saskatchewan that Dylan's missing, his family start arriving one by one to Edmonton. There was about 20 of them that came to start looking for Dylan, and they all set up camp at Dylan, Colin, and Nick's house, and they started their own little search party in the area. The family's early experience with the police was not very hopeful.
To see our whole camp set up there, like thinking we were going to turn around and go home, and we didn't.
So these were just the local officers, the people assigned to that neighborhood at first.
They started looking on their own because they felt like in those very early hours, they weren't going to get the help that they needed, and it would be on them to find Dylan. Dylan's brother Derek said in an interview that he did for the Fifth Estate that there was one day an officer came by to talk to the family at the house, and they see that the family has set up this, command station there, and the officer asks Derek if there's any new information that he's gotten. And he's like, is there any information you've gotten?
I had one officer that asked me, oh, any new information? I said, you tell me. Like, what do you mean you're asking me if we're, handing out posters, like.
On the Thursday after Dylan had gone missing, the police did set up their own search. They brought recovery dogs with them and searched around the area. They don't find Dylan, but they did end up finding his wallet with his ID and bank cards in one of his neighbor's backyards. Right from the get-go, the police thought that because Dylan left in just a t-shirt, jeans, and shoes, running shoes, they were going to find him frozen to death somewhere. I think the thought also that he had been drinking during the day, they just assumed, he had stumbled off, and because he was drunk, he passed out and just, succumbed to the elements. And when they weren't finding him, they figured, okay, well, when spring arrives and everything thaws, we're going to find him. And I personally believe in those very crucial days, they just put their blinders on and it changed the outcome of this case. Dylan's mom has made great points acknowledging that, yes, he was drinking during the day. It was a decent amount, but remember, he napped. He also went out for food, and Melanie, his mother, went to that restaurant that he went to, spoke to the waitress that served him, and the waitress said, he seemed fine. He wasn't plastered. He wasn't just, guzzling Fireball like it was water. But that's what the police believed. But when spring came, Dylan was never found, despite there being a record amount of bodies that were found that year. And so from this point on, his disappearance has definitely been the center of a lot of speculation and a lot of controversy, to say the least. His family really has suffered an unimaginable amount of pain, not only because they don't know where Dylan is, but they are divided on what they believe happened to him. I do want to make it clear, not all of them feel this way, but there are several that do feel like Dylan's cousins, Nick and Colin, potentially Cameron, know a lot more than what they've shared. Some of Colin's actions and comments have made him specifically the subject of the majority of these speculations. And then there was a special done on this case on a Canadian program called The Fifth Estate, and it definitely did not eliminate any suspicions towards Colin. I'm not gonna lie, when I initially saw it, I was influenced to feel the same towards him, but as I've been looking into things a little bit further the past few weeks, reading more articles, like I've mentioned, I listened to an episode with his sister and his mom on the Dark Poutine podcast. I will link that below. It's a great interview. It's very touching to hear his family speak about him. It was just a really well done episode, and I really appreciated it because it gave a little bit more context to hear his family speak about the situation and learn a little bit more about what was happening behind the scenes. Three main things I think that people hold on to that paint Colin in not the best light. One of them being that it came out when family was asking Colin where Dylan was. His response was, "I don't know, I'm not his keeper." Another thing that has raised some eyebrows is that while people were out looking for Dylan, Colin had pre-booked a trip to go skydiving and he kept that. And another thing that is brought up is that a comment that he made to the police when the police were asking, what do you think happened to Dylan? He said, "I don't know. This is Edmonton. There are construction sites all around here and people get dumped in them and, go missing forever." So, given like that, doesn't look good. But Dylan's sister Tara brought up in this podcast that some of those situations had deeper context behind them. When it came to the whole construction site comment, she said that it was a group of about 20 family members who were all in, Dylan, Colin, and Nick's house, stationed there with their little command center. And police were asking, everybody as a whole just to kind of give their speculation so they could, kind of try to brainstorm all together what could have happened. And everybody is shooting out ideas. And so then it was Colin's question where he said that there was a major construction site in the area at the time, and was there a chance that his body could have been there? And I guess the officer didn't really see anything wrong with that question. It was a valid question, and he said, generally that's actually not the case. Those areas are monitored by security during the evening. A lot of them are, well lit too, so it would deter somebody from trying to sneak and hide a body. And if there was one left there during the day when it was light out, a worker would most likely have seen it. Even if there was a hole that was dug, they just don't all of a sudden just blindly go and, start filling it. When it came to the whole skydiving thing, I guess this was an event that was pre-booked, I believe, for some time in advance. And it was very soon after Dylan was reported missing. And I don't think that anybody really knew what was going on in those early days. It's quite possible that Colin felt still quite bitter towards Dylan. He had just kicked him out of the house, and maybe in his mind he thought, okay, well, he just ran off. Why am I going to cancel my plans that I'm looking forward to when we don't even know what's going on? And it's those emotions that are still super fresh in those really early days when he's asked where he thinks Dylan is, and he says, "I don't know, I don't care, I'm not his keeper." So, there is a lot to consider in terms of there always being, maybe some more context to some of these things. And I won't lie, in the special, it didn't share any of that. It didn't share that the cousins were very active in the search. They had everybody at their house doing what they could to help and look for him. Tara said they went with her to put flyers around the city. They attended every vigil that was held for Dylan until the point where they couldn't anymore because there was just so much tension with the family that it was just best that they stopped coming. In my opinion, there was just a lot of time wasted just from the get-go that might have even been able to squash any of these speculations. For several years, Dylan's case was just a missing persons case. Ultimately, it did reach the desk of Homicide Sergeant Bill Clark, who is the detective who solved Johnny Altinger's murder. We covered that story on the channel. If the name is familiar to you, it is the Dexter one, Mark Twitchell. So Sergeant Clark's team has been added to the file. And in his opinion, in interviews, he's made it very clear that he feels like the investigation was botched at the beginning. His beliefs are that from the very get-go, it should have never been a missing persons case, and it always should have been looked at as a homicide. His opinion is that when somebody usually succumbs to the elements, if they just, passed out drunk and froze to death, that person is usually found, especially by now. It's been 14 years. He has said that in real, missing persons cases, 98% of them in Edmonton are solved. Now, the weekend that Dylan went missing was actually the same weekend that Johnny Altinger was murdered. So there is the assumption that maybe the police couldn't handle how big that was, and then Dylan just got, shuffled to the side and overlooked. And it's so unfortunate because of so many years going by and Dylan's case being looked at as a missing persons case just years and years were lost to properly look into things that could have just drastically changed the outcome. For instance, his cell phone records were never pulled, and neither were his online accounts. And then 10 years later, the family is approached by the police wondering if they know where a computer that Dylan used to use might be. I mean, that's frustrating for me, who isn't even a member of the family, just imagining 10 years later being asked, hey, there actually have been something on that computer that could help solve Dylan's case, find where he might be. Do you know where that is? Like, what? Like I said at the beginning, this year in 2022, it will be 14 years that Dylan's been missing. And Sergeant Clark truly believes that with all of these years gone by, it means somebody has concealed him. His belief, though, is that with the time that's passed, it almost could be beneficial for the case, because it's more time for somebody's conscience to just get heavier and heavier if they have information on what happened to Dylan, and they're just, waiting and yearning for that opportunity to just let all the information out. And that's been my hope this whole time that I've been looking into Dylan's story. It's my hope whenever I do any case like this where we really don't have answers. I always pray that the video just reaches the right person that it needs at the right time, and they're just ready to help. If that's the case for anybody watching, Detective Al Elliott has the case now for anybody who has information. I will leave all of the numbers that you need in my description below. These cases really make my heart ache because you learn how alone a lot of these family members feel and how left in the dark they are. And it's tough because I do realize that the police have a job to do. There are a lot of things that are kept from the public or from the family to protect the integrity of the investigation. But this is the second family for me personally who has dealt with Edmonton City Police and have felt so unsupported. Nadia Atwi's family has felt the same way since Nadia disappeared. I don't even think it's so much of, give me all of the information I need to know everything and then risk the investigation. But for example, in Dylan's case, his family wasn't even notified that his case had been transferred from missing persons to a homicide in 2017, or that the homicide division had even had their eyes on it since 2015. The person they found that information out from was the reporter who did the news segment and the special on the Fifth Estate. One thing that Nadia Atwi's mother and I spoke about when I went to meet with her was that she would love to see something started where there's somewhere or someone that these family members can go to have some direction and have some of that support. I don't expect it to be the police to comfort them and tell them what to do or even what to expect in terms of an investigation behind the scenes. But right now, the families are just really left to figure it out on their own, especially in those early, very crucial days where they need action happening right now. These family members aren't trained or prepared to deal with how to approach a loved one vanishing. It has to be an incredibly frustrating feeling because you feel like all of the weight is on your shoulders and you don't even know where to start. You just feel helpless. One thing that is giving Dylan's family some hope is that now the Canadian DNA database is accepting samples from missing people across the country, so they can match unidentified remains with DNA that has been submitted to the databank, which is huge that now, it's nationwide. So for example, if someone went missing from, Edmonton, Alberta, but was found, in Kelowna, BC, but this person was found, without ID, they were just a John Doe, they could use their DNA and try to match it with DNA that has been submitted to this database and solve the case. Melanie has said that she has submitted Dylan's retainer to the database, but as of today, she hasn't heard anything. My final thoughts on this, I guess, keep going to the most optimistic place that I can be, as I always am. I would just, love for any family to bring back their loved one alive. There are members of Dylan's family who believe that there's a chance that he is still alive out there. Allegedly, during that fight that happened in the kitchen of the house, Dylan hit his head quite hard on the stove. So there, is the hope from his family that maybe that caused him to have some sort of brain bleed, maybe, you know, leading to a brain injury, possible amnesia. I mean, there's tons of theories that you can go off of with that. And without him being found, you know, year after year, 14 years have gone by, you can't help but, you know, have that glimmer of hope. And why would you not want to hold on to that to get you through? If you have any information, like I said, I will leave all of the resources that you need below. That will have the reference number for Dylan's file, as well as a phone line that has been specifically set up for the Koshman family. I did reach out to the Koshmans because I know that they get together every year on the anniversary of Dylan's disappearance and hold a vigil just to keep his face and his story in the public. I want to offer any help that I can with that. I haven't heard anything back at this moment, but I will definitely make sure to update you and let you know if there's anything us Sippendales can do to help the Koshman family. All right, you guys, that is it for me today. If you haven't already, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It means the world to me. You know already. I love and I appreciate you so much. The answer to today's riddle, quick refresher: I turn once. What is out will not get in. I turn again. What is in will not get out. What am I? And the answer is a key. All right, I'll see you in the next video. I will miss you terribly. Until then, make sure to love each other, love yourself, and I will see you soon.